It's day 9 in our 30-day vocabulary challenge. We're starting 2021 by learning 105 new words from the academic word list. Words you'll want to know if you're preparing for the IELTS or TOEFL exam, but also if you read or watch the news in English or have conversations with native speakers. In other words, these are useful words that will come through for you once you really understand how to use them. You're learning 4 new words today with tons of real-life examples, so grab your friends, have them join you in this challenge, and let's do this. When you learn a new word, make up your own sentence, record yourself in a video saying that sentence, and post to social media using the hashtag Rachel's English 30-Day Challenge. And as always, if you like this video or you learned something new, please like and subscribe with notifications. It means a lot. Don't forget, there's a download to go with this video, a list of all the words with definitions and sample sentences, as well as quizzes to make sure you're really getting and remembering these words. You can get that download by following this link or the link in the video description. Our first word today is the word formula.
Formula.
When aw as in law is followed by r, like in a stressed syllable here, it's not a pure aw vowel. It's not fa, formula, but it's full, for. So the lips round a little bit more and the tongue shifts back a little bit more than for a pure aw. Formula. It's a noun. It means a plan or method for doing, making, or achieving something. His investment strategy is based on a simple formula. Let's look again up close and in slow motion.
Formula.
And now we'll go to English for 5 examples of this word in real situations.
Yeah, so Netflix, they have a formula and it seems to work for them.
Netflix has a formula. They have a certain way of creating shows and movies.
Yeah, so Netflix, they have a formula and it seems to work for them.
Here's another example.
We're going to talk about a formula for procrastination.
A formula for procrastination. Procrastination is putting something off that you should do, like waiting until the very last night to study for a big exam. A formula for procrastination, a method for procrastination. Different ways to distract yourself so that you don't do what you really should do.
We're going to talk about a formula for procrastination.
Here's another example.
And there's no one formula.
There's no one formula. There's no one way to do it. Many different methods or approaches or ways of doing it would work.
And there's no one formula.
Another example.
And that's sort of the magic formula.
The magic formula. The way of doing something that works really well.
And that's sort of the magic formula.
Here's our last example.
My formula was to just be creative.
My formula was just to be creative. My way of doing things, my method, was to let creativity guide me.
My formula was to just be creative.
The next word is theory. This is one of those words that can be 2 syllables or 3, theory or theory. The 2-syllable pronunciation is more common, and it's what I'll do.
Theory.
It's a noun, an idea or set of ideas that's intended to explain facts or events. An idea that's possibly true, but not known or proven to be true. I've been reading Darwin's Theories of Evolution. Let's look at the pronunciation up close and in slow motion again.
I as in sit is not pure here. The R does change it. It changes into a sound more like E as in she. So it's not theory, but theory.
Theory.
And now we'll go to English for 5 examples of this word in real situations.
My theory is Venice is sinking in part because it just was not constructed to hold all those crowds all day long.
My theory, my guess is, I think this is true, but I haven't proven it to be true.
My theory is Venice is sinking in part because it just was not constructed to hold all those crowds all day long.
Here's another example.
Do you have a theory on why that is?
Do you have a theory, a guess, as to why this thing is happening? Is it something you can try to explain?
Do you have a theory on why that is?
Here's another example.
We really don't know how the universe began, even though we have theory or what's before it.
We have a theory, but we really don't know. It's our idea based on what we know, but it's not proven.
We really don't know how the universe began, even though we have theory or what's before it.
Here's another example.
So there again, it's true in theory, and it's true for some women, but for many, it's not.
When something is true in theory, this means the idea makes sense and things should work like that, but in real life it might not. For example, in theory, you should do better on a test if you study more, but if you're really nervous, you might actually do worse.
So there again, it's true in theory, and it's true for some women, but for many, it's not.
Here's our last example.
Because his theory was you cannot have a great city without a great public school system.
This was his theory. This is what he thought about cities and schools without having set up a city with a great school system. He hadn't proven it, but it was his idea about how things worked.
Because his theory was you cannot have a great city without a great public school system.
Our next word is interpret.
Interpret.
It's a little tricky with those two R's, isn't it? That's the vowel R combination. Interpret. Then a quick P, tongue stays in position for the R before the final syllable. Interpret. It's a verb. It means to explain the meaning of something, to understand in a certain way, or to translate. The team is trying to interpret results from their study. Let's look again up close and in slow motion.
Interpret. 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 Interpret.
And now we'll go to English for 5 examples of this word in real situations.
And normally we interpret these physical changes as anxiety.
We explain the physical changes by saying, these people were anxious, and that's why it happened.
And normally we interpret these physical changes as anxiety.
Another example.
And the way that I interpret what's going on is a couple of things.
The way that I explain this. We have a situation. I have ideas about why it's this way.
And the way that I interpret what's going on is a couple of things.
Let's go on to our next example.
Now, there's many ways to interpret this, and I have to be careful here.
There are many ways to interpret this. Many different ways this can be explained. For example, the baby is crying because he's too tired, because he ate too much, because he's hungry, because he's hot, because he's too cold. There are many different explanations, many ways to interpret why the baby is crying.
Now, there's many ways to interpret this, and I have to be careful here.
Here's another example.
But I'll let you interpret that however you want.
You interpret it. You decide what it means or how it came to be. You explain it.
But I'll let you interpret that however you want.
Here's our last example.
So that led us to an assessment. So trying to interpret, well, why did this happen?
Trying to understand and explain why this happened.
So that led us to an assessment. So trying to interpret, well, why did this happen?
Our last word today is define.
Define.
It's a verb. It means to explain the meaning of a word or a phrase, or to show or describe clearly and completely. I go to learnersdictionary.com to define difficult terms. Let's look again up close and in slow motion.
Define. 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 Define.
And now we'll go to English for 5 examples of this word in real situations.
Once we define the problem, we can prevent that death.
You have to define the problem to really understand what it is, to be able to describe it fully and clearly before you can start to solve the problem.
Once we define the problem, we can prevent that death.
Another example.
We use technology to define ourselves by sharing our thoughts and feelings even as we're having them.
We define ourselves. We explain the meaning of ourselves. We show who we are by what we post on social media.
We use technology to define ourselves by sharing our thoughts and feelings even as we're having them.
Here's another example.
But I'm here to define a little bit more about what chemistry is.
Define more about what chemistry is. Describe clearly and completely. What is chemistry?
But I'm here to define a little bit more about what chemistry is.
Here's another example.
How do you define yourself?
How do you define yourself? Do you define yourself by your work, your relationships, your hobbies, your passion? How do you describe yourself?
How do you define yourself?
Here's our last example.
Patiently is being patient, and you know you can't define a word by a word, so I had to look it up.
You can't define a word by a word. That means you can't explain the meaning of a word by using that same word in the explanation. For example, you can't say, an ant is a little brown ant. You have to say something like, an ant is a little brown insect. You can't explain something using that same thing to explain it. You have to use other words, other things to define it.
Patiently is being patient, and you know you can't define a word by a word, so I had to look it up.
Seeing their real-life examples can really help you understand how to use these words, can't it? I have a challenge for you now. Make up a sentence with one of these words and post it to social media, tag me, and use the hashtag Rachel's English 30-Day Challenge. Don't be shy, you can do this. Our next video comes out tomorrow at 10 a.m. Philadelphia time. Come back to learn 4 more vocabulary words. In the meantime, keep your studies going with this video and check out my online courses at rachelsenglishacademy.com. You'll become a more confident English speaker. And please do remember to subscribe. I love being your English teacher. That's it, and thanks so much for using Rachel's English.